1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
DJ, is that your bag?
Nope. Wait.
Okay, I'm going to put my mic on. Guys, don't worry.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I have the privilege of representing Speaker of the House Mark Eves. It's okay. The reason we're here today is the Speaker has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Governor LePage. I just confirmed that with the clerk's office that we received that. Thank you.
Take two.
Take two.
We're here today because the Speaker of the House has been forced to file a federal civil rights lawsuit against Governor LePage. And the Speaker wanted to tell the people of Maine directly why he was compelled to take that unusual step. So he's going to speak to you in a minute about that. I'm here today to answer questions you might have about the lawsuit, which I circulated by email, and we have copies of that so that you can ask any questions you like about the lawsuit. But first, I want to hear from the Speaker about why he did file this lawsuit. Mark?
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm here with my wife, Laura. We have just filed a federal lawsuit against Governor LePage, and we're here today to explain to the people of Maine why we have done that. The governor has admitted to blackmailing Goodwill Hinckley, and we filed a lawsuit this afternoon to make sure that he is held accountable for the abuse of power and blackmail. I was raised by a military chaplain and a public school teacher. They both taught me to always give back to the community, to always serve the public, and these are the values that led me into the profession that I chose to help at-risk kids. These are the values that led me to serve in the state legislature, and these are the values that led me to apply for the job of president of Goodwill Hinckley. The board went through an exhaustive 9-month search, 19 applicants. They decided that I was the most qualified applicant after that search based on clinical, administrative, and my ability to lead in state efforts. Well documented, the governor immediately retaliated illegally by blackmailing the school, saying that they would need to fire me in order to get the $500,000 of funding. The governor's actions clearly violate the First Amendment right of every Maine citizen to have their legislator be able to speak freely and independently without the threat of the governor. The time has come that somebody has to stand up and say enough. Enough of the abuse of power, enough of the blackmail, and as a top legislative leader in the legislature, I accept the responsibility to make sure that the governor is held accountable for his blackmail. And we filed this lawsuit not on just behalf of our family, but on behalf of every single Maine family, every single Maine legislator, every single Maine citizen, every single private organization in this state, so that they are not in fear of the governor's retaliation, so that they can speak freely and independently without the fear of the governor's retribution, retaliation, or revenge. So this lawsuit is about that, and today starts that journey. And with that, we will take questions.
Why did we proceed against the governor individually instead of the office of the governor as the chief executive of the state?
The Speaker was very careful in making a decision not to sue the State of Maine as the happens to be the governor, but in this state and in this country, nobody is above the law. And so we Americans, we Mainers, have a right to sue even the president, even the governor. And that's what makes our system work, unlike other parts of the world. So it was a very careful decision by the Speaker to only sue the governor, and he's only seeking compensatory damages from the governor personally and not from anybody else.
So you're hoping to hurt the governor financially by making him pay compensatory and punitive damages and all that, right?
Well, frankly, when I first began representing Moore, what I wanted to do is get the governor to change his mind, because we got a lot of work to do here in Maine to make things better. I have 4 children, I have a granddaughter, and the Speaker has a young family too. So I tried to talk him out of it. So the last thing we wanted was a lawsuit. I have plenty of work, but once the governor said, after he was asked by me repeatedly to withdraw the threat, we had no option. I had to file this lawsuit as a civil rights lawyer. This is a lawsuit that has to be filed. And so no, that's not the point. But the governor told me why somebody who listed in the federal court, probably the only place we can get that he has to stop retaliating, not against just Mark and the Speaker of the House, but lots and lots of other people. Anybody who dares to disagree with him, he thinks he can go after with state money, state taxpayer money. And that's got to stop for all Mainers so we can have our government back. What are the damages? We're very happy to accept what a Maine jury decides based on the evidence. And that will be absolutely appropriate, and we have a lot of confidence in a Maine jury to decide that.
The primary thrust of your argument, the first
Go
ahead, please.
So if I could just follow up on that, I think it's really important for people to understand that this is not about the money. This is about righting a wrong. This is about holding the governor accountable for the fact that he blackmailed Goodwill Hinckley, a school that's provided a safe haven for at-risk kids for 125 years. That's what this is about. This is also about making sure that this does not happen to any other family, any other citizen, any other private organization. Accountability has to happen or it will continue. That's why we filed the lawsuit.
Mark, the governor said, as you might imagine, that this is all just political, that you're trying to exact revenge for last year's election and trying to beat him in a way that Democrats couldn't last year. How do you respond to that?
So this really is about one thing and one thing only, and it is about holding the governor accountable for blackmailing Goodwill Hinckley. That is all this is about, and making sure that this does not happen to anybody else in our state. He has threatened our democracy, our legislator, and every single family that has a different opinion than him. That's not the way our society is supposed to run. And this is filed, not just on behalf of our family, but every single family in this state has a different opinion than the governor. That is the free speech argument.
Right, and if you look at the complaint, at the end, what we asked for, first of all, is the federal court to tell the governor this is illegal. It's violating federal law. We want the governor to hear that from somebody who has authority. And secondly, we asked for an order that the governor stop doing this, not just to Markey, not just to the Speaker of the House, but to all Mainers. So those are the first 2 things we're asking for. They're the top priorities right now. And I also would say, I signed this complaint, and I brought cases against the office of governor of Democrats, and they haven't been very happy with me. I am an equal opportunity civil rights lawyer. So I signed this complaint because it states a very strong claim under federal civil rights law, not for any political reason.
And the federal law is violated?
It's called the First Amendment, and most of us are very familiar with it, but some people, when they get a lot of power, forget about it.
David, can you talk a little bit about this handwritten note? It's referenced 2 times in the complaint filed today. Will you be able to get that somehow? Have you been able to get that under discovery or have a legal method?
Right, I think we will get the note if it hasn't been destroyed, but we know about the note. The note's been confirmed, and the governor, you'll notice here, when he made the threat, he did it in secret. So he wrote a letter and gave it to the press about why he didn't want the board to hire Mark. And the board considered those arguments and decided, no, you're wrong. So then he sent, in secret, a note. Now, why does the governor do something in secret? Because he knows it's wrong. Because he does almost everything in public. So then, when Mark got fired and we had to tell the people of Maine what happened, he was in hiding for a few days, and he would not tell the press whether or not he had made this threat. The following week, he finally admitted to it. So does the note matter at this point? The governor is defending he is bragging about making this threat. So I think the note is kind of old news at this point. The question is, why does this governor think that he can brag about withholding $500,000 from a private nonprofit organization just because he's mad at the Speaker of the House for not supporting his abolition of income tax and his position against wind energy? So that's what it's about.
But doesn't he have the right to cut that funding if he chooses?
In the United States, we don't have dictators, so he has some discretion, but it doesn't include the discretion to discriminate or break the First Amendment. So, for example, he could say to the Goodwill Hinckley School, I'm not going to give you the money unless you hire a Catholic, or unless you fire me. So that's an example there, pretty obvious that discretion only goes so far. Nobody can violate the law, including the governor. So this idea that he has the discretion to break the First Amendment,
If he adjusts the lead in the funding and didn't say why, would that have been okay?
well, that's not what happened. He's been very public about why. And if he said the reason is, I don't want a Catholic or I do want a Catholic, that would violate the law. So this is the same thing. Because he's given an illegal reason, and that has an effect. He's doing this on purpose at this point because he wants to send a message. If you mess with me, you're going to lose your job. And nobody in Maine can afford to be in the legislature and lose their job. It doesn't pay enough to have a family. So he's doing that on purpose. So that's why we have to deal with that. Because it's going to affect anybody who's even thinking of running for the legislature.
And there's a line in there, I believe you say, that the governor knew that this other funding from the Alpine Foundation would be cut off, the state money would cut off. Do you have proof of that?
Well, we know that it's in the complaint that the Alpine Center sent a letter to the board, Goodwill Hinckley, in which they indicated knowledge that the funding was likely to be cut. And the only person who made that decision is the governor. And he hasn't said that he consulted with anybody about that. He didn't talk to his commissioner of education. He didn't consult educational experts. He decided to get Mark Hughes fired. So I think it's pretty reasonable and logical to infer that he told the Alpine Foundation that he was going to cut that money because he's the one who was doing it, he's the one who was talking about it. But there are things we're going to have to learn in the course of a lawsuit, and one of the advantages of the federal courts is that they have a process for finding the evidence and finding the facts, which would include, for example, interviewing under oath the governor. And that would be very important to ask him these questions and have him explain these things, and also to get documents that will show perhaps communications related to your question. There are some facts we don't know yet, but the facts we know are strong enough to justify a finding in the Speaker's favor against the governor in this lawsuit.
Mark, as you know, the legislature has started conducting its own investigation into this whole issue too. Will the lawsuit and that investigation have any effect on each other? Or?
I mean, while it's the same subject of blackmail, it's different. I mean, we made the unusual step to file a federal lawsuit against the governor because we felt strongly that this cannot happen again to another Maine family, another Maine individual, another private organization. This cannot happen again. If it goes unchecked, somebody has to stand up and say something. So the Governor Oversight Committee will do their work. We're going to do ours outside of the State House. He violated federal law, violated my civil rights, and that's why we brought this case forward, not just for us, but for everybody.
And how much of this, you gave the answer several times that you're doing this not for you, but for the state in general. But you're also doing it for you. From a personal level, how is this impacting you? And are you hoping that if the threat is removed and you win this, to get that job?
There's nothing more than I would want than to lead that great institution and organization. That is where I wish we were, that I was 4 weeks into the job, accomplishing some goals. This is about everybody else. We're making sure that the governor is held accountable. That is what is important here. He blackmailed a private, nonprofit organization, and if he gets away with it, any individual, whether you're a legislator, or a family member sitting at home, or a private organization, you wonder, what if I say something that the governor doesn't like? What's going to happen? Will he retaliate against me? That's the only reason why we're here today.
Just imagine if President Obama was accused of getting the Speaker of the House fired. I mean, that's not just a personal dispute. That really affects whether our government can work or not. It's the same here at the Maine level. If the governor can basically economically destroy the leader of the representatives that the people have chosen, he is basically sitting on top of the legislature and he's making it powerless. And so that's a much bigger issue. I mean, Mark has been affected very negatively. I know I have 4 kids, he's got 3 kids. Taking care of them is a financial issue. But he wouldn't have gone to the legislature if he was focused on money, frankly. That was not a good career choice for him. So that's not what he's about. And that's this is the last thing Mark Eves would do, is bring a lawsuit. It's totally contrary to his problem-solving approach and his personality, and I know that just from spending time with him in the last few weeks. So this was a last resort, but it was ultimately necessary to have it done.
Mark, you've talked a lot about why you're doing this, but can you talk a little bit about how this whole issue has affected your family?
Sure. I mean, clearly I was looking forward to transitioning into the next chapter. There are term limits in the legislature. I was ending my last term and looking forward to really going towards a job, really leading a great organization, an institution that was consistent with the values that brought me to run for the legislature, to choose my profession. Those values were consistent with the mission of Goodwill Hinckley. We were very much forward looking to that next chapter in our life. I feel disappointed that I'm not able to provide that leadership for that organization. There's a lot of work to do there for those at-risk kids. So it has impacted my family, and that's why I do not want this to happen to any other family or individual. That's why we're bringing this suit forward.
Time frame, how this is going to work out, the depositions till you actually get in court?
The future?
The future, yes.
Well, there are, unfortunately, in civil rights cases, lots of roadblocks put up to make it much harder to win. So government officials like the governor have more defenses and procedural protections than the average person. Whether that's right or wrong, that's the way it is. So that will affect the course of the case. But I'm quite confident that the federal court will allow us to proceed and also allow us to take the deposition of the governor. So I think those are major events that will happen.
Is there any other legal avenues for you to proceed interfering with a contract, something like that?
Yes, under state law, and that's an example. State law requires that you wait 120 days before filing suit in court once you file a notice of claim, so you're prohibited from going to court quickly. So I know the press was wondering why it was taking so long, but actually this is considered lightning speed for lawyers to file a lawsuit this quickly. And on the state claim, I can't file the lawsuit right away. I have to go through the notice of claim process. So there are some protections for government officials that are going to slow things down a little.
Have you already filed a notice of claim at the state level?
It will be following very soon upon this federal court complaint because it's the same facts. So that will be happening very soon.
And you guys can't get a jury trial here? Is that your call? Or?
The Speaker has an absolute right to a jury trial. We will get a jury trial. That's one of the crown jewels of our system of justice, is that I think it's one area where the people really still rule, and unlike other parts of the world, and also with moneyed interest. So we're really looking forward to cross-section of Mainers looking at this and applying their common sense. I would point out on that a couple of weeks before the governor got the Speaker fired, he said publicly, frankly, I think Markey should go back where he came from. It basically saying he wanted him to leave Maine, which is a pretty personally vindictive comment. Move his 3 children and get out of the state. And then a few weeks later, he takes an action that would possibly cause that. So I think when Mainers look at that story, it doesn't take a PhD to figure out what's going on there. It's plain and simple retaliation and abuse of power.
Any clues as to who might be representing the governor?
No, I don't know. That's totally up to the governor.
Would there be any conflict if his current legal counsel were to do it? Can you foresee any conflict?
I have to worry about my issues. I'm not going to meddle in other people's issues.
And in terms of timing, I mean, is this likely to be 6 months, a year, before you end up getting a hearing?
Well, frankly, it depends a little bit on how much the governor resists accountability. So, he could try to get an appeal and try to stop everything from happening if he doesn't want to answer questions under oath. I don't think that will work, but it might slow things down. So a lot of it depends on whether the governor is willing to step forward and let a Maine jury decide.
But a deposition, you're going to seek a deposition. That would be giving answers under oath.
It would.
And a trial would come at some date beyond that.
Right, that's true.
Is it likely that either of those things would happen before January?
I really don't like making predictions. The bosses are right behind me, the federal judges, and they're going to decide, and I don't want to get in the business of telling them what they're going to be doing ahead of time.
Mr. Speaker, are you considering leaving Maine? Employment-wise, what are you doing?
So I am not considering leaving Maine. We moved here for a very specific reason, and that is because of its communities, of its quality of its public education system, because my parents were here. As we thought about having kids of our own, that's what drove us here. We plan on staying here. We love Maine. We love everything that it has to offer. I'm very fortunate. Actually, I was able to start a job this week with a former employer, Woodford's, who I worked for last year. They provide services to kids with autism and intellectual disabilities, so very thrilled to be able to start with them this week, and glad that I'm able to help them out.
What's your job title, or what exactly are you doing with Woodford's?
Director of Development, so I'm doing a number of different fundraising projects with them, one of which is a preschool for kids with autism up in Waterville, a number of projects like that we're making sure that we can serve kids with autism and intellectual disabilities.
As far as Goodwill Hinckley, to open an old wound, are you confident that your political position has no bearing whatsoever on the chief of fire?
You know, I take them at their word. I know what process I went through, and it was very clear. So they've been very clear that this has been an apolitical process. They went through a 9-month search to make sure that they got as many applicants as they could. They decided unanimously that I was the most qualified candidate to lead their organization as president.
Yeah, I think we were pretty careful in the court complaint. The detail marks very long, 15-year devotion to a career of service, especially for children and youth at risk and who are disadvantaged. And you don't do that so you can make big bucks later. That's not a good career plan for that. So it's obvious that he was somebody whose heart and soul was into the mission of the Goodwill Hinckley School, and that's a pretty essential qualification to be a great president. Also, I think being elected Speaker of the House is not a trivial matter. It is the most democratic part of our government, and to lead the House requires leadership, and to get budgets passed requires leadership. So I know the governor doesn't have a high opinion of the legislature, but the people who founded our country and the state think it's the most important part of our government. And so I think it is an accomplishment to be the Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yep, you're all set.